breakdown. I got a spaceship in my head and a ray gun in my toes. Let's get rowdy. I'm a science fiction man. I got a spaceship in my head.
Udir non va.
This is Mabel. Come on out here, honey. You know everybody? This is Mabel for everybody. All right. Mabel. Mabel's not crazy. She's unusual.
Tell me what you want me to be, how you want me to be. I can be that. I can be anything. You tell me, Mabel.
Mabel's a delicate, sensitive woman.
And the reason I'm worried is that you've been acting a little strange. I wonder if you've been aware of that or not.
This is what I call a really handsome face.
That's enough.
Okay, come on, let's dance.
No.
Look at this muscle. I
That's
never
enough.
saw such muscles. I bet he didn't fit in his suit.
Mabel,
Come on.
you had your fun, it's enough.
Vito Grimaldi.
Get your ass down!
And like your friends.
I know it. I know that.
I'm not one of those stiffs that you like with their noses up in the air. And boom, boom, with their noses up in the air. How awfully nice.
Billy's looking at you this way.
Concio per le pressario, se ti tolgo insieme non si spacciano da me. Ti
Okay, welcome to the fourth Movie Night Extravaganza takeover of the This Is Revolution podcast. My name is Forrest Miller, host of Movie Night Extravaganza. Tonight, we'll be talking about John Cassavettes' 1974 relationship drama, A Woman Under the Influence, starring Gena Rowlands and Peter Falk, about a working-class family in Los Angeles, back when that was possible, dealing with an emotional breakdown and domestic turmoil. Now, before I bring in my panelists for the evening, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to both This Is Revolution podcast and my podcast, Movie Night Extravaganza. On Friday night, Movie Night Extravaganza will be entering its second season, which is pretty amazing. Beginning with Alien and going through a month of December just doing sci-fi movies. Of course, the whole season won't just be sci-fi movies, but we just showed this is the first time actually I've showed it on any kind of podcast, but it was the new intro for Movie Night Invasion. You can also support Movie Night Extravaganza on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of amazing discussions and interviews. Links are in the description. So without further ado, let's bring on the crew. Starting up, we have Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, a frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, and of course, now with season 2 of Movie Night Extravaganza, our third co-host, our third mic, whatever you want to call it. Our second guest is Matthew Film Guy, frequent contributor for Majority Report, and community film connoisseur.
Film guy. Sounds
yeah. Film guy, for sure. How's it going?
Going well, Forrest. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here to talk movies with you and Conan Headroom.
So I wanted to start this conversation with a clip that Matthew, you sent me this clip as a in text, I guess, text form when you were talking about this movie, and it's from John Cassavettes' interview published by Criterion. I'm not sure where the interview originally was because the guy is French, and I'm sure it was for a prestigious French film, some form of.
Is it in black and white?
There's just audio, so I assume
Okay.
it's a radio show of some kind.
I'm not sure if I know the source of it, but it's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know. One interesting thing about it is throughout the entire interview, you can hear like John Cassavetes pouring drinks for himself, and you can hear like 6 different drinks going at the same time, and then somebody comes in. I like you can't even do this on a fucking podcast. Like somebody wanders in at one point, somebody else, and he's like, "Oh, Gena will be downstairs with you in a little bit if you want, and you guys can have a drink together." And the person's like, "All right." It's another French person, and then he has a conversation.
Yeah, it was probably a series of hotels press interviews.
Yeah, but it's funny that they included that in the actual, because I'm assuming that's the final version of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm assuming it wasn't like the unedited footage. So it's funny to like hear them having conversations, pouring drinks, like doing whatever he was doing in the hotel. Like it probably was in the hotel room, but I don't know. This is so you can hear that in this clip. That's why I bring that up.
Well, listen, I'm half crazy myself, and I think almost everyone is. I mean, we're all verging on some kind of insanity, except that from our posture, we say that, everyone else is crazy, everyone else is wrong, everyone else is, so we all have our own truths. And my truth is that everyone else is crazy. And I'm saying, I believe very strongly that all women who are married for any length of time don't have, and if they love their husbands, they don't have any place to put their emotions. And that can drive them crazy. Now, other women find outlets for their life, and they go their own way and say, look, I must be more independent, and I must go this way, and they go. And but this particular woman, I don't think she's crazy. I think she's so totally devoted to the concept, to the idea that being a good wife means that there's a reciprocal thing somewhere, but she doesn't know quite what it is. And I think that she's not crazy. I think that she's just frustrated beyond belief. I think that she doesn't know what is right. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to do it. She's socially inept. And I think more than being crazy, I think she's socially inept. And emotionally inept. Mm-hmm. So that we look at that, and from our standpoint, she's at this spaghetti table, and she's saying, I remember you, I remember your wife, I don't remember you, to the man that says, oh yes, don't you remember we were here? But everything that she does is in a way an expression of individuality. She's trying to be individual within the framework of something that no one can be that comfortable in, and no one really knows the way. I mean, I don't know whether you're married or not, but to know the way of behavior, none of us know that. We think we know it as we learn. Hello, how do you do? Friends come in, can I get you a drink? We're going to go to the movie. What the hell? What does all that mean? I don't think she cracks up. I think that she never changes. I don't think that she ever changed. A man committed her. She was the same before she was committed. In fact, she was very lucid. I mean, I thought she was very, very, very plain, direct, like women are much more direct than men, which is always offensive to men. I don't know, for some damn reason. But we don't like to be told that we made a fool of ourselves. And he made a fool of himself. So he came home and the kids were naked. Isn't that terrible? I mean, Who was insane? I thought he was insane. To get, because he felt already from past experience that something was happening that wasn't happening. And he had her committed on that basis.
Yeah, so I found that fascinating, because when you look at like the like every bio of this movie or every short description of this movie, right? Because in trying to do like a bio for an episode or something like that, like a lot of times I'll look at the what people have said about it before in like a just a sentence or two, and then I'm not going to obviously copy that, but I try to use something similar to try to explain what the movie was about or something. And I don't think that the movie was about what everybody's kind of perceiving it to be about, which is this woman goes crazy and her husband commits her and everything around that. Obviously, John Cassavettes especially feels like that's not the case. So it's interesting that the one sentence byline for this movie, because I think it's not that really means anything at all, but like when people say what's this movie about, and in one sentence you have to say it's, well, a woman went crazy and her family deals with the fallout, and that's not what the movie's about at all.
I mean, Cassavetes in particular makes it very difficult to sum up any of his movies. The kinds of movies that he makes cannot be summed up. He was like, his whole enterprise is against summing up. He made movies you had to live through, that you had to experience, that you had to, pay attention to moment by moment to actually make any sense of. They never act conclusions or sort of commentary, really. So it's very funny that you're coming at it through the other end of the telescope like that. Like, what's the marketing for this movie? Because it was very difficult, which is to me also what's funny about watching that trailer. And also you see on this, I have the poster from the VHS release in like the 90s, but it's like, best picture of the year, all the, I just feel like this movie benefited from sort of obliquely touching on certain politically fashionable topics that allowed people to feel like, oh, it's an important movie about women and their, a domestic situation and so on. But in reality, if you watch the movie, it has almost nothing to do with these sort of issues. He doesn't spend any time really talking about a wider social context or anything that could be considered I don't think a political statement. And yet, this movie has a reputation as being his best movie. It actually is my favorite of all of his movies. And he's, I got to say, my favorite filmmaker of all the filmmakers. And yet it's just funny to me to see how the two sort of like ways of thinking of movies sort of slightly overlap here enough that, you can experience the first blush of this movie as a woman goes crazy, husband commits her. I mean, yeah, I guess that's in there. But if you watch the actual movie, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's not it at all. You actually have to watch the movie.
Well, I don't really give a fuck about what a byline is, but I thought it was an interesting place to start this conversation out at. Because writing like a bio for a movie, like I went out of my way to keep it vague on this one, and say a working class family in Los Angeles dealing with emotional breakdown and domestic turmoil, because that can go for any number of characters in this movie, right? Like Nick, I would say, goes through obviously everybody's going through domestic turmoil, but the emotional breakdown I don't think is Mabel's, like because she doesn't seem, I empathize with her as a character a lot, because like the whole idea of small talk, kind of being forced into these rigid social structures that we're not comfortable with, that nobody really is comfortable with. You can't, by definition, be comfortable with, because somebody a long time ago came up with the idea, well, this is how a husband behaves, this is how a wife behaves, this is how you behave in this social situation, this is how you behave in this social situation. And like you're saying with rigidity, like everything bleeds through. And so I guess it's kind of a postmodernist reading in some ways of life itself, but like the rigid social structures don't work for anybody in real life. So this movie takes it on, rather than taking it on a societal level, everything kind of goes on an individual level, and how an individual is experiencing these things separate from, I think, the political implications of it.
Yeah, and I just was saying, it's funny that that is it's Cassavetes' entire sort of effort is about trying to break through those limitations and resist the urge to reduce things to a sort of easily to understand little bite-sized way of being. And so I guess it's ironic that, how do you introduce this movie to somebody without doing that? It does violence to the actual experience of it. But you and that's another thing Cassavetes says, is you have to try. You have to, you know, find a way to express yourself somehow. You know, there's that famous sequence where she says, like, tell me how you want me to be. I will be that.
And that was in the trailer. And they didn't really do that justice either, because it was, you know, it was like
well, they kind of cut it to make her look like maybe she is kind of crazy, right? Wacko.
I mean, I think that the moment that he kind of in that quote, I didn't fucking write down what the moment in that quote was, but there's a moment in the quote where he's talking about she's not crazy. I mean, obviously he thinks he's like Nick's crazy as the character, Peter Falk's character, and in some ways because he's kind of reacting to things in his head, which I think is also incredibly relatable in the sense of like anxiety, right? Like we don't want to be humiliated. Guys don't want to be humiliated. Women don't want to be humiliated, but guys especially don't want to be humiliated. We don't want to feel like you know, someone's cheating on us, or we're looking stupid around town, or we're the person with the crazy wife. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have all of these ideas, and because of that, all of a sudden your mind starts spinning, and your mind goes out of control, and you have these anxiety reactions to things, and it's like, oh well, I know that she has this guy over, and she's doing this and that, and then on the basis of that, he's like completely right. Like she gets committed on the basis of what he's assuming that she's done.
It's funny that the rest of that quote that's not in the trailer, when he says like she's not crazy, she's like what she said, she's unique, and then the rest of that line is like she cleans the house, she cooks food, she gets the kids. What's crazy about that? And he's just describing like her, you know, her social roles that she actually does, you know, perform, and so it's just funny he reveals that he's actually kind of wacko at the same time by the way he describes her not being crazy. But you know, that quote you played from Cassavettes makes it pretty clear. And if you study the making of this film and basically the making of all of those films, you realize that Mabel is sort of an analog for Cassavetes himself. He was this kind of, you know, socially awkward, if you will, sort of no boundaries kind of person, didn't always know how to act in social settings, you know, got into trouble, you know, and also was like Mabel, sort of this conductor. She gets everyone to sing. She gets, you know, Mr. Jensen to dance and do the swans, all this, you know, he's directing life around him too. So she's the analog for him. And from what research I've read, Nick is sort of the analog for how Gena actually is. She's the one who's concerned about appearances in real life. So it was him telling basically the one of the most personal issues of his life in film form, which is what he did. This is the way he did films.
I think that it's also fascinating in a lot of ways that I think that he's kind of experiencing that as a director in two separate ways, because there's obviously, you know, something that I've experienced too is, you know, being an artistic person and dealing with a society that doesn't necessarily reward like an artist mentality. And I'm not saying, yeah, I mean, Conan, I'm sure you're.
Which part of that are you laughing at, Conan?
The inherent truth of it, and that's my life.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, so, but like, there's a relatability about that, right? Like Mabel as a character wants to sing and dance and kind of reach her inner child. She gets along with the children so well. You know what I mean? Like her connection to her children is beautiful, and society doesn't reward that. Society doesn't reward. I mean, unless maybe like, you know, you're that one like teacher that really reaches kids, and then parents kind of get acclimated to it over time, or you know what I mean. But it's still kind of results based in that sense. And as a mother, really, like, you know, the results are down the road, because you know the way your kids, I think, act as human beings down the road is you know, is different. Is different on that level, I think, than you know, than the immediate results that people expect from parents or from, you know, adults in our society. And
absolutely, the schools are meant to sort of shave off your round edges, right, and fit you into a you know, into the box that you're supposed to be in for the rest of your life. That's unfortunately what happens. Yeah,
but then also Cassavetes, I think, is suffering from the fact that the creative people in our society, the people that are engaging with Hollywood, which is not necessarily a creative place, but you know, that is where artists that are trying to do what he's doing, you know, filmmaking, sneaking it by seeing it by, you know, everybody from censors and to, like, you know, the studios themselves to financiers, but still, like, you know, people are creative in that field, and then Cassavetes is not getting, you know, he's still a renegade in that space.
Well,
So
he
it's
had
kind
to
of-
pay for this. He had to pay for this entire movie by himself, including with Peter Falk's money, and actually distributed the movie himself too. So he was basically forced into being a complete and total independent. Nobody wanted to make these kinds of movies. Nobody wanted to show these kinds of movies, even once it was made. I think there's a famous story. I think maybe it was this movie that had to be like forced into the New York Film Festival by Martin Scorsese because nobody even wanted to program it. Whoa, hello.
Has anyone mentioned that dude's son made The Notebook?
Really?
No.
Cassavetes-
I was
Cassavetes
deliberately
son
not going to mention that.
I just want to say hi to Matthew because I haven't seen Matthew in forever.
What's up, man? Glad you dropped in to talk about Nick Cassavetes for a second here. We how would we gonna miss that opportunity?
Thank God.
Nick Cassavetes is the bad guy in The Wraith. And
in Face Off.
Oh,
Wow.
yes.
He's had a wonderfully terrible career. God bless him.
Kinda.
He was the kid at the end of Husbands going, "Mom, Dad's home." That was his best role.
Conan, did you know that?
I'll say this: I actually liked "She's So Lovely," the cover version of his dad's movies that he made with Sean Penn and John Travolta. People hate that movie, especially Cassavetes heads, but I actually liked it. It sort of was like a pop cover of a Cassavetes movie.
I really like that trailer, Forrest, that you played early on in this. I really like it. I like the intro video that you did. It's pretty awesome.
I'm really excited about this second season gimmick that we're doing. I mean, not gimmick, but you know what I mean. Like, this iteration of it.
I was gonna try to come on and do the show production half of it, but I was too terrified because I've been fighting with my Wi-Fi here in Mexico literally all day. And if I would have fucked up your show, I would have felt really bad. So I'm just gonna fuck it up for like 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna leave.
I'm glad you said you were fighting with your Wi-Fi and not your wife.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Is that because I heard that almost?
Yeah, I did too, and I wasn't gonna say anything.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. That was quick. That was cool.
All right, great show. Yeah, thanks everybody. See you later.
Yeah,
we've been overshadowed by a headliner. I do like that I changed my name to Forrest Miller because it originally said Jason Miles host because I'm on.
And then he came on as you.
Yeah, I feel like I'm cucking the world. No. Yeah.
Where were we?
Can
I
talk about literally any of the points in the last half hour, or are we already moved on?
Sorry that we went like this for the first half hour.
If you raise your hand, you will be called on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll go see what what I can come up with. I think it's notable to me that there's been a big discussion on this for years about whether this is or is not a feminist movie, and I think that it was touched on earlier. This is a very personal movie, right? This is sort of, first of all, as dudes, it really isn't our place to say whether it's a feminist movie or not. So we'll start with that. But
it's not your place to tell me as a dude.
Three white dudes talking about feminism. Let's see how.
Yeah, exactly. But
I don't think Cassavetes thought it was his either. So perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It's
a likable motherfucker, by the way. We need to just get that out of the way. Like, as far as impish directors go, I think that he's a likable fucking guy. And not just because he tried to bang my grandma. But
yeah,
anyway.
And I think
he tried to bang a lot of grandmas.
Well, I mean, it's not a. I'm just gonna walk right past all of that. It's not that it's like judgmental, but it's not that it's a judgmental film. Hey, look at this crazy broad. it's very personal in that way. I mean, in a lot of ways, and I didn't think about this the first time I saw it, but in a lot of ways, Gena Rowlands' character reminds me of my mother, because she was very much kind of like not built for like proper reality in a different way, but like in the way that she was just ill-fitting to a lot of the things that were, more considered, not even just like traditional homemaking or whatever, but just the world at large. And certainly, I inherited some of those things with her with a much more pragmatic nature. And the methodology for recognizing that and supporting that is far different now than it was in the 70s. So it's interesting, not just because it's a well done movie, and not just because, frankly, Gena Rowlands' performance is like one of my favorite of all time. Like it's otherworldly. For people that have not seen this movie, you have to at least watch this movie to watch this woman act, because she is like you. It doesn't seem like acting. You seem like you're like literally watching like a woman like on the edge.
It gets different like every time you watch it. That's how amazing the performance is, right? Like you pick up on different
it's
things.
It's nuanced.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mentioned on my Letterboxd review of it the first time, is that like, this is a house of like constant chaos too. So there is these sort of like, leftover 1950s style expectations of what a woman should or shouldn't be doing. But also just from a sheer personal perspective, like it's just, there's chaos all the time. And then there's like, people dropping by, and is she doing the right thing by being friendly? Is she being too friendly? She likes that part of it. Oh, maybe she likes it too much, and this and that and the other. And then there's the mother. The mother gets involved. And it's a whole thing.
This is Bo Hardwood, who did the music, and I wanted to play this for you because he did an interview with Criterion about the process of creating the music for this.
I've been working on Woman Under the Influence all through Million Moskowitz. One day, he called me up, and he told me the whole story. Took an hour and a half, and just laid everything out, and talked to me about this woman. He became this woman. And then he says, I want you to do the music on this. And I want you to do it on piano. I don't play piano. Rent one. And I said, are you serious? He said, yes, I know you can do it. I know it. So Peter Falk gave me his dressing room out at Universal, and we moved in a piano. And that's where I went every day. And I sat there and started tinkling on the piano at the same time, because I'm melody driven. It was easy for me. John told me initially that we would probably work with an orchestrator or an arranger, and it would be orchestrated, which took a little heat off my shoulders. When it was all said and done, when the picture was finished and I had my music demos laid in, I was waiting for John to get an arranger, and it just wasn't in the stars. I think he fell in love with my raw tracks, the way they were, and he was very happy with that and didn't want to screw with it. The music from Woman Under the Influence is basically about love. It's about loving somebody, loving your family, loving them no matter what. It's about betrayal. It's about deep loss. There's part of it that is traumatic, that those heavy chords I was playing somewhere in the middle is deep loss. We carry those things around with us. Most of the time I've found that the people that either betrayed you or hurt you were doing the best they could, the best they were able to do. And so when you can accept that, that's pretty neat stuff. And I think that's what John saw in a lot of his characters. They were all deeply flawed people. But the love between Mabel and Nick, that little beautiful thing they had with all the crap and denial and neurosis. There was a connection there, and that's what was important to John.
I wanted to talk, I guess, about the music part of it though, more than anything, because I found it fascinating that he learned piano, Bo Harwood, in order to do the soundtrack for this. And like,
if Cassavetes asked me to like learn oboe, then I would make an oboe soundtrack, because I mean, you're in for a ride no matter what, basically. I mean, and it's a great soundtrack, and it definitely sounds like for those that are not musicians, it sounds like the kind of piano soundtrack someone would make that is approaching the instrument from a different way.
Yeah, and I think that also the fact that there's so much opera in it, I really like. I love the trailer that we played at the beginning, because the opera is so intense during it, and I love that it's not just non-diegetic opera, which at times it is just like a soundtrack playing in the background, and there is a soundtrack throughout the movie. But I love that like the actors actually sing the opera in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And even when they're mocking Nick after Mabel. Like that's I mean, it's such a humiliating scene, but it's also a kind of hilarious scene when the one worker behind him is mocking him by singing like an operatic song about like a crazy woman. And he's like, no, not Nick's wife. Like the other guys, like, so they're fucking with him. And then of course it leads to like the horrific scene, which, Eddie, who's the one person that kind of stood up for her, I think, a little bit when they're in the truck in the beginning, saying she's a sensitive, delicate woman, and doesn't really forgive Nick first for putting her away, and then I think for the fact that he falls down a fucking thing and breaks every bone in his body.
Right.
The one person, that takes it seriously and isn't mocking him and isn't doing the thing where he's just like, oh well, this is my not boss obviously, but like unit boss. You know what I mean? Like workforce boss. Like because they're construction workers, so it's like there's one person leading. I think he's the one leading the construction worker, the team, but he's not the boss obviously. That's like whoever hired the team itself. Like, it's interesting that he's the one person that's not mocking him and doesn't say anything and is just silent and giving him the silent treatment. And that's the thing that enrages him. And he pulls on the rope and the guy falls down the hill.
Right. Yeah. And that's notable, right? And it's somehow all this mundane conflict seems very real and plausible to it. It never seems like extraordinary one way or the other. It never seems like unlikely. It's sort of like, well, of course that would be happening. Why wouldn't that be happening? And that's kind of one thing that I think Cassavetes is so good at. And also one of the reasons why he's good as an actor too, because what he brings to a role is that same sort of like, it seems spontaneous even when it isn't.
So I had a thought earlier that, I don't think that Cassavetes is like sitting there reading feminist theory and being like, hey, this is what I want to do with my movie. Clearly he's not. But I think, these ideas bleed over. And it's interesting to think of it as in terms of like a generational crossroads where the 1970s, specifically with second wave feminism kind of taking its height, I think at that point, where, the idea of like bored housewife syndrome, which, is something that Betty Friedan touched on a lot throughout her career. But I mean, starting with like the feminine mystique, which is the first time I ever encountered that was Mad Men, which is kind of funny. But, it's interesting to me that this kind of touches so quickly on that, right? Like, she's a housewife, and it's this idea that like you can be more than a wife and a mother, or like, a wife or a mother or a spinster. You know what I mean? Like, you could be more than that. You can have a career. You don't have to kind of pick and choose. You don't have to decide you're a career woman or a wife and a mother. Like, women are fully formed beings at this point for the first, not for the first time, but like for the first time in a mainstream sense, with second wave feminism, which is kind of making that point. And obviously second wave feminism had flaws. It was very, very, very lily white. Like, it kind of went around the upper and middle classes more than anything else. But still, I think that this movie very quickly touches into that vein. And I don't think Cassavetes was doing that as like thinking it out, being like, well, I've been reading these feminist scholars, but I think that it goes into the experience of everyday people. Like half the population of the world are women. Like it kind of, that zeitgeist can't not bleed through. Which I love that the research of this is it kind of just knocked on doors and and went to
Right,
people's
yeah.
houses and sat down in their houses.
Well, I think so. You hit on something important, that I think that it's a very coming from a humanistic place, right? Like, it's not coming from a place of like being an ist necessarily, but it's just coming
Yeah.
from a very natural humanistic place, a place of empathy, really, a place of empathy and lack of judgment, despite there being plenty of judgment in the movie. And as I find myself more and more frustrated in the in these times, like, with just people rushing to judgment. It's notable that this is I think it comes from a very humanistic place, and that makes it more real and more important than like it being a message film about feminism and whatever.
Well, I don't think it's a message film, and I don't think that it's necessarily like interacting with those theories in any specific kind of way. I just think that those experiences bleed into the lives of everyday people, and
I agree.
no, I think that they continue to. And the thing that fascinates me about this movie is, and I know Matthew Film Guy was not interested in talking about this whatsoever, but the fact that it's
I just wanted to make sure Conan got a chance to talk. So,
well, thank you. That's very very humanistic of you, Matthew. Thank you.
You know, the generational crossroad thing is not that I think that this movie is kind of trying to make that point, or that it's important that it's made when it was. It's kind of just something that's still happening now, right? Where the expectations, like the expectations of one generation doesn't match up with the expectations of another generation. Things are changing faster than a lot of people are comfortable with, maybe in a working class environment. But then at the same time, there are people that have never felt comfortable with those roles, with gender roles, with anything like that, not comfortable with societal roles. And those people are always going to be seen, I think, as maybe crazy, or maybe out of it, or maybe like, there's a whole bunch of different, words, I guess you could use, like outsiders, but they're not. And, these rigid roles are always getting transformed. And I think generation to generation, it's not that we transform our way out of specific roles. It's that, maybe the aesthetics of it change. And someone like Cassavettes, I think, is making the point that, like, more than just the aesthetics have to change, the role itself needs to just be destroyed, because there's no way that half the population can ever fit into one role, and the other half of the population can fit into another role. Like, that's not the way that things work, or ever have.
Yes,
I think he's against the idea of roles in general. I think he takes. Mm-hmm. I think his films are, like all of his films are, one of his major themes is how anything that we use to try to express ourselves is going to eventually be insufficient to expressing ourselves, or limiting our expression, or taming our expression, whether that's, even just the words that we say, the things that we try to express through words, or the ways that we, in bigger senses have constructed a society. His movies are personal in the very, not just like the biographical sense that we talked about before. They're about people and bodies and voices and the way we speak and the way we sound and all of
my least favorite words. Make sure you tell me they're about spaces.
Spaces?
No, when they say, I don't know, they say bodies, like never mind. It's a thing that.
Well, no, let's talk about it, because he's not interested in abstract knowledge. He's interested in, he's not interested in grand themes, or, especially in the way he makes his movies. They're not like a Kubrick movie where you've got like a metaphor on screen. He's talking about trying to understand the way we really communicate and why that's good enough, but also, a kind of a limitation. So it's, I'm not talking about bodies like in a political sense.
No, I know.
Literally, what
the words
body. You are a body. It's a profound statement of metaphysics. You are not some abstract, idealized version of yourself. You have to be in your actual self, in your actual physical limitation.
An idealized version of myself. Oh.
What's that?
No, I said, but Jesus Christ, I wish I wasn't an idolized version of myself. No, I agree.
But a lot of art takes that as its point, and that's great in another sense, but that's not his thing. He's a very, he's a very pragmatic filmmaker. He's trying to talk about these things on a very local level, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, it's interesting that obviously there's the whole ideological reading of like postmodernism that kind of does a similar thing, but then kind of also puts that stuff into a box. Like, you know what I mean? Like the reading of it.
No, I don't know what you mean. Tell me what you mean.
Well, okay. So postmodernism kind of takes that for granted, like that there's no real cultural spaces necessarily. There's no real cultural dynamics. Like these roles aren't necessarily like I remember when I was working for Ben, we had somebody on to debate postmodernism, and it's the guy that runs Renegade University. What the fuck is his name? But it's like nothing to him was like a set down concept, and I don't feel like Cassavetes is doing it in that kind of sense either, where it's like, you know, that in itself becomes a thing. I think humanist is kind of the perfect humanist is the perfect word for it, right? Because it's looking at someone on such a molecular individual human level that we're looking at this nuanced reading, because there are no real, I mean, art in general, I think when people are trying to make Thaddeus Russell, that's who we had on, and it fucking drove me fucking crazy. But I came on because he said that Thaddeus Russell was the person that came on Ben's show and was doing the whole how do you know that Trump didn't lose the election thing, because he's like, how can you really know any knowledge without experiencing it firsthand? Which is the kind of.
But that's not what Cassavetes is saying, that there can be no knowledge. He's locating it in a very different place than most movies would locate it. That's all.
No, I'm saying that I think that it's cool that he's not a postmodernist filmmaker, because I think there is.
I mean, maybe he does have some overlap with that school of thought. I'm not versed enough in the practicalities of postmodernist theory to tell you that, but. What I'm hearing you interpret, it doesn't sound like what he's after.
Don't become versed in postmodernist theory. It's a fucking trap. And
I'm moving on to meta-modernism. I'm skipping postmodernism.
All right. the Zuck school of filmmaking. I have one more.
But can I just try to explain that just in a maybe a different way? You know, he is interested in, like, people always say he's a realistic, or he's into realism, and I don't agree with that necessarily either. Even though he's not making these sort of fantasy films, I think the reality that he's interested in is an inner reality, people's feelings and desires, and not the sort of day to day. Like when we think of realism, it's not this like documentary about socioeconomic class or ethnicity. I mean, they're Italian, but how many ways do we know that? It's not like the set of Moonstruck where everything on every wall is like they're Italian. It's like we get like 2 lines and they may eat some spaghetti. So he's interested in things that are a lot more transcendental than social. Do you know what I'm saying? He's trying to capture. Yeah, that there's a limitation to our ability to express things, but it's not. Those limits are, if they're not like.
I'm not a spaghetti guy. I'm not a spaghetti guy.
Right. He's not a spaghetti guy. Can't make it any more clear than that. No, the interview. He definitely thinks that social systems exist. So it's not like, oh, there's nothing that how do you know? But he thinks that he doesn't trust them.
The postmodernist reading of it is social structures don't exist, and then
they exist. Nick is a social structure. His job is a social structure. The doctor is a social structure. All these people come in to give us the voice from the social structure, and she's the victim of those things, or she's battling against those things. It's all about the fact that those things exist. He's just saying they are something to battle, and that they damage our experience. Our pure expression of ourselves has to go through these things that warp it and alter it, and in her case, do real damage.
And I think that, I wish that Cassavetes had lived longer. I wish everyone that died young lived longer, but I wish Cassavetes had lived longer.
So he could be here on this show tonight to talk about what he meant.
To jump on,
to have some technical difficulties like the rest of us.
His internet would never go out. Thank God he didn't live to have his internet.
His audio interface would work just fine.
I'm so happy Cassavetes didn't live long.
This was a metaphor.
Wi-Fi go out.
This was a metaphor of the limits of my expression could not be contained.
Right.
So the only thing is the conditions between a man and a woman. who don't judge each other on the levels that most people judge each other on, and who live together with great acceptance, more acceptance than I think most people. And still, the pain of their marriage and the pain of the double cross, the pain of a woman being under the influence of a man, which isn't fair, but that's the way it is. You know, love has an influence. And if you love somebody, you want them to be proud of you, that you want them to love you, that you want them to take care of you, you want them to be romantic. You want so much from the person you love that it's an impossibility. And at times they crumble. And I think it's both. It happens to men and women. When you're in love with somebody, you also take them at times and put them in your pocket, forget about them, and walk away. Have enormous confidence in the fact that they will always be there.
So here's the deal. I think if Gena Rowlands, is it Gena or Gena? Did we?
It's Gena.
It's Gena. Okay.
See, but then I was watching the Cassavettes interview and he said Gena.
All right. If Miss Rollins,
whatever he said,
wasn't so amazing, and if Peter Falk wasn't so amazing,
Gena Rowlands.
So
I don't know my wife's name.
How do you say the salami?
So if those two weren't so great, we would be talking about the mother, because the mother's performance, I can't forget the actress's name right now, and the character are extraordinary in that overbearing, what became a bit of a trope to a certain degree later on.
And it's real here. It gets queued up because when he's on the phone in the beginning of it, right, with his mother, the first thing you hear is the mother feels like she's dying, having some health problems.
He said, "Why did you eat fish at Hamburger Heaven?"
Yeah. So there's
this line that goes by.
Really real, like, as someone that grew up with an Italian family, and you know, not that it has to be an Italian family for this to work, but like the hypochondriac shit is fucking real. You know what I mean? Like, and that's obviously not just an Italian thing, but like I do understand, like in the same way that like I don't think you have to be Italian to appreciate the mom in The Sopranos. And yet, you know what I mean? Like, and yet it's kind of something that I understand.
But is she really all that? Obviously, the mom in The Sopranos is very Italian. But is she?
No, I'm saying it's not. But like, I felt connected to that, like to the hypochondriac nature of that conversation, and it cues you up for the anxiety-inducing role that is the mother later on in the movie, right? Because I don't think that necessarily, like, you get the picture from the beginning when he's, you know, all of his coworkers are there. He wants to make a good impression on all of his coworkers as like the team boss or whatever that he is of his construction crew. And then the first thing that, like, you know, as things go wrong during that thing, he's on the phone with his mother, and then he's justifying it like, well, you know, you feel like your mother's mortality is real. You know what I mean? But like, that's fucking real. That's real. Like, you get this call, and like in your head, you're like, oh, I need to cue into this anxiety. That probably he gets that call like once a day. She probably has some kind of worry about her health or something. You know what I mean? Like once a day. And he still kind of feels empathetic enough for his mother that he has to answer the phone, feels guilty, like wants to talk to her, wants to talk about her health, all this stuff. Feels like, oh, well, my mother might die this time. That's cueing into a feeling, I think. It's not just an Italian thing, but I'm saying like it's cueing into a feeling that's very fucking real.
Yeah, and it's another good point that, you know, for all of Nick's like dictatorialness, he's also an empathetic, caring person. But by the way, do you realize that Nick's mother is played by Cassavetes' actual mother?
Is she really? I did not know that. No.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
And Gena Rowlands' mom has a role in it too. She's in one of the later scenes. So it was all a family affair making movies for Cassavetes.
Is she one of the people at the party?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
She's let me look up I can't remember what her name is. She's one of the Mortensons. She's Martha Mortensen.
Here's how wild this movie is and how full of like incredible scenes is. I kind of forgot about the whole party scene until right now, and I was like, oh yeah, that's like
when she comes home from the hospital. I mean, and they're all like, hi, how are you? Yeah,
and how about
that is
the worst mother scene
too, because there is like a drive, I think, just in general, right? Like in a working class community, and I know you're gonna roll your eyes at that. Yeah, roll your eyes at that but like in a working class,
that's
community,
subtle.
but like
Pretty good.
also in like
Pull
an
it off.
ethnic, queuing up Bobby Wynant here, like an ethnic community, to like have this relationship.
I like ethnic food. Okay, go on.
Oh, you
Nice.
what do? You eat some ethnic food, and now you're feeling sick, Mom? No, but no, but there's like there's a desire to have community play a big role, because I think we think about Europe as somewhere that we immigrate, like families immigrated from, as like a community affair, which it wasn't. But like there's this connection to community. I think that it's highly inappropriate when someone comes back from a psychiatric hospital to have like every person they've ever met at the house fucking partying. But at the same time, there's this idea, like, but like it takes a village or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the whole community has to.
But that's one of the big themes of not just this movie, but all of Cassavetes' work, is to the relationship between the self and the group, between society and the individual, and between wanting to connect and wanting to have some sort of autonomy and individuality. I mean, that's the big question. That's the big work, right? How are we? That's one of the major questions of life. How do we exist when those two things are sort of at odds and we want them both?
Yeah, but I think specifically here, though, in the connection with like being kind of a member of a working class, roll your eyes again, it's fine, ethnic.
You're gonna break my eyes.
Like, but I don't think it has to be Italian. But like, I think that in that sense, right, having that sense of community is something that's important to Nick throughout this. And then Nick is someone I think that retreats into tradition, like throughout the entire movie, right, is very willing to retreat into tradition, has the family involved in everything, has the relationship with his mother, has the marriage as something that kind of everyone in a weird way has a part of, even though he claims like, I don't want everyone to have a part of it, stay out of my affairs. But then he invites everybody to the fucking party when his wife gets out of the psychiatric hospital. And there's this, I think this off-kilter relationship to tradition where he's running back to something that he doesn't quite understand. In the same way,
how about when he takes his kids to the beach and gives them beer and pushes them down on the beach? Go have fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my grandfather did that. Well, he was on beaches a lot. I don't know. He gave me some
parenting from a different time, for sure.
Yeah, but like there's this weird thing where he doesn't quite. That's why he's so on edge the entire movie. Part of it, I think. I mean, part of it is obviously like untreated anger issues, but like I think there's a big part of it.
You're looking for all these prescriptions to diagnose him.
I'm in therapy,
know
bro.
all of that.
I've
done a shitload too.
Therapy right now.
I know, but the movie isn't therapy. That's good for therapy, not.
So, but I think that whatever like issues with anger he has that get triggered by this or that, I think a big part of it is the attachment to traditions you don't quite understand. And I think Nick throughout the movie is attached to these traditions that he doesn't understand, and it's compulsively making him upset, because when these things start to slip away, when these avatars kind of working class, happily existing, his relationship to the power dynamic of his work is one. His relationship to his wife, his relationship to his mother, all these things start to slip away. He grasps further at the traditional aspect of it until the end of the movie, where he obviously accepts, I think there's genuine acceptance at the end of the movie, but like throughout this entire thing, he's kind of grasping at something he doesn't quite understand. At the same time, I think Mabel, her relationship to being a wife, her relationship to being, I think her relationship to being a mother, she 100% understands. But her relationship to being a wife and to being part of this society, she's kind of grasping at it the same way. And they completely misunderstand each other at points throughout this movie while still kind of doing the same thing.
So I think she's trying to, like, I think she's fundamentally unable to conform, and yet she's still trying because she feels like that's what she has to do to sort of keep a family, and all she wants to love and be loved and all this stuff.
But that's what Nick is doing too.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, okay, so Matthew, one of the better points I think that was made while you were gone is I mentioned that the title, Woman Under the Influence.
Oh, what you made was one of the better points.
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, thank you. It was. I got it in before like the next audio device broke. But the idea that woman under the influence, like, well, what's the influence? Well, clearly it's alcohol, but it's like, no, it's the influence of like societal structures and expectation. And I think that's that's one of the keys in understanding the movie. And like,
that is a good point, Conan.
Thank you.
Well, you're making it sound like I said it was under the influence of alcohol, which I very much did not.
No. I wasn't saying
that's
you
what
were.
everybody says. That's the first thing that comes to people's minds.
Yeah, well, and on purpose, and I'm sure Cassavetes didn't choose that title for it, or maybe he did.
I think he did. I got the screenplay and it's typed
all right.
across the front
Maybe,
page.
It's clever.
But like it's multi-layered in a way that I think.
Well, Cassavetes was a big alcoholic himself.
Yeah,
so I'm sure he thought of it.
So it makes you think of like Days of Wine and Roses or Lost Weekend or something, right? And which are great movies. I love those films.
Yeah,
but like
and she's shown drinking all of like one time in the movie at the beginning, basically.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Because there's the one moment where the mother, who seems like she probably does have some kind of relationship to alcohol, like she is an unhinged human being. She's the one that's like she drinks, but it's like I didn't see like I see
that's you nailed one of the best things about this movie, and this is what I've sort of been trying to feed back to you.
I got
everyone can make good points, gentlemen, please.
Only one per show, Matthew. Only one.
Movie night grapple for the title.
Highlander rules in this.
Very unbecoming, gentlemen. But that's the whole point. Is like that mom's the kind of person that wants to summarize, boil down. Her problem is she drinks. And the movie doesn't give you any reason to think that that's got any accuracy, in the same way that many people, I'm not saying you, Forrest, but many people want to say this is, the portrait of a woman feminist or working class or these kind of things. When the movie doesn't necessarily,
I said, this sounds a lot like me, but whatever.
Hey, if the shoe fits, but I'm just saying, you're not alone. But because the movie doesn't give you really any of that stuff, you really have to be bringing it to it. The only time we first of all, needless to say, Gena Rowlands and Peter Falk are not Italian. Gena Rowlands is a WASP and Peter Falk is Jewish. So it's not like we got to cast Cher.
To be fair, she's Swedish in this movie. She's
I think I was being fair. No, I know, but I'm just saying that.
So one of the things is,
very unfair. Matthew film guy.
Being really unfair. No, but one of the things is a form.
It's on Twitch. We can do all the Trump on Twitch. No one cares.
One of the things is like a form of cultural clash. Like, and I don't think that I don't think it's a big theme in the movie, but there is like a cultural clash, especially with the father, I think, that isn't willing to stand up for her, and like that family versus Nick's family. I don't think that they're making an explicit point. Hey, this is an Italian family. This is a Swedish family. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that there is a kind of cultural clash in general, I think, throughout this movie.
But cultural? Why specifically cultural? As opposed to like interpersonal or sort of imaginative, the ways personalities are?
I think it's both. It's all of the above.
But explain to me where you get the cultural clash. I'm curious, genuinely.
Well, there is an element of like an ethnic, Bobby Warren, and shout out again, like an ethnic, an ethnic thing with Nick's family being Italian, which I don't think that it's just Italian, but there is like kind of a Mediterranean dynamic where it's more, I think, attached to this feeling of community, this working class community. That and it can be Greek, it can be Jewish, it can be like there's a whole bunch of different ethnicities that could be swapped out for. But I also think there's a WASP style, like the father kind of just being like this timid whatever guy that doesn't quite understand the boundaries of stuff and just wants to make small talk and doesn't, his aversion to spaghetti. Like I think that you are supposed to feel like there is some.
You've definitely pointed to like 3 moments in a 2.5 hour movie that I think might fulfill that role, but it's all the most important stuff that happens in the movie. I don't think is that stuff.
No, but I do think that I think that her aversion, deserved aversion to a certain kind of structural role as a wife, a certain kind of a list of things that when she's like, oh, anything you want me to be, I can be. A lot of it is her creativity. A lot of it is her personality in general.
Yeah.
I think that 100% is the case.
I think we get a lot more evidence that it's weighted on that aspect than any of the cultural stuff. That's my view.
I also think that Nick's retreat into his own traditions has an ethnic tinge to it, I guess, like in the sense of his own retreat towards like this big style of like family, community. Like these things are things that he thinks that he needs to be replicating, that are, you know, and I think a perfect symbol of all of this is the spaghetti, because I don't think that people in actual Italy like eat spaghetti the way that they do, but she's trying to engage with his family's culture in a way that she's like, oh well, every single time we have people over, let's make spaghetti. See, I'm Mabel Longhetti. I'm someone who's like, you know, I have an Italian
Rhymes
like,
with spaghetti.
yeah, no, but like
it's the law.
She's pushing this cultural avatar that doesn't actually have any correspondence. And I get this from Cassavettes' conversation during this interview. Like, it's not like something that I'm pulling out of my ass. Like, during this interview, he has a conversation about how he feels like Italian Americans in actual America have a very different experience, a preferable experience in their eyes to Italians in Italy, where it's like, you know, he makes a point that I really, really fucking love, where it's like somebody from Napoli and someone from Sicily feel some kind of cultural connection in America. In Italy, they wouldn't. And in the same way, like somebody making a bunch of fucking damp ass spaghetti and like handing it out at a party and be like, "You want spaghetti? You want spaghetti? You want spaghetti?" It's this kind of embrace of a cultural tradition that doesn't actually have its roots in the actual place that you're assuming it does. But still, as an American, as someone who's melding themselves into like this culture, that feels like cultural avatars are important to someone like Nick, who's kind of grasping desperately at these senses of tradition. I do think that is important to plot.
I just think it's like on a list of all the, like you call them, avatars that he's grabbing onto. It's cultural is maybe one, yeah, but it's also sort of patriarchal. Or my point there is just that he's interested in these sort of contained ways of expressing yourself. It's cultural, just happens to possibly be one, but we have all these other moments that it's not necessarily about that per se. And she, on the other side, one thing that's interesting is to think of, like, when you think of a realist filmmaking, and even something thanks, Conan, for making a comment.
You don't have to read it while you're talking.
When someone pops up, I'm like, wait, somebody's... No, it's just Conan.
Nope, just me.
But as I was saying, unlike something like The Sopranos, which I also love, daylight comes and me want to go home. But listen, first I'll say, something like The Sopranos goes to great lengths to have everyone's clothes look like the tracksuits they wear, and paying attention to the sort of the verisimilitude of the cultural milieu. Whereas in this, I think maybe there's like a cross on the wall and they eat spaghetti. There's like almost no attention paid to what you would normally consider a sort of realistic portrayal if you were interested in, expressing these sort of cultural signifiers. And the only scene to me that's interesting where clothing makes the meaning of the scene is, that scene where she goes to the bus stop and she's like wearing like mismatched clothes, and it's doing the opposite of what other clothing meaning usually does in films, which is like, oh, it's telling me something easy to understand about this person. They're Italian or this. For her, it makes her even harder to understand. She's weird. Why is she doing that? So
I think today, if you fucking did that, people would be like, "Oh, she just must have come out of a rave or something." And it's a stylistic.
Well, people want to find a way to make sense of it for sure, but it's she defies ethnic and social or economic categories,
as the Swedes often do. Just kidding.
As who often do?
No, I said as the Swedes often do, but it was a joke.
Oh,
I thought that was the Swiss, but all right, whatever.
No, I mean, I don't think that when it does touch on cultural aesthetics, when it does touch on those avatars, I don't think that it really plays a role in anything. I would also argue that The Sopranos is literally making that point. The Sopranos is literally making the point of our own connection to, like, well, I mean,
we're in an echo chamber of culture. Yeah, sure.
As an Italian American, it has nothing to do with an actual ethnicity, as someone who actually is Italian. Like, The Sopranos beats you over the head with that. But I think this movie kind of does too, because I think that the ethnicity aspect of it, the cultural aspect of it, has nothing to do with really anything. But it's
what does this movie beat you over the head with?
No, I said this movie doesn't.
Doesn't. Sorry.
No, so I said The Sopranos beats you over the head with this
Yeah, for
movie.
sure.
It's one of a list of things, really, that that people are retreating towards. I think retreating kind of in this movie is the important point for every character that isn't Mabel, because I think Mabel doesn't retreat, which is the point that John Cassavettes is making in that interview where he says she doesn't change, everybody else changes. And I personally, and I assume John Cassavetes, based on this movie and based on interviews and whatever else, kind of has like an aversion to, I mean, you called it kind of phony, like a phoniness, but in this movie specifically, it's like small talk. And I don't think that it's just phoniness in this case, because I think there's an incredible level of anxiety behind it. And you can see it. And this movie this movie shows it in such a vivid sense, because there really is like, I have to think about like people want to talk about their sexuality, and families kind of retreat from that. No, but families kind of retreat from that, right? Like they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about things that aren't controversial. And it seems like John Cassavetes.
How are you? Where you been?
Yeah,
hello. Too hot.
Literally.
Too cold.
Yeah, no, like literally what Nick puts out there. He's like small talk, and it's funny that he's lost it at that point. Like he's completely lost it to the point where he's screaming, "Small talk! How you been?
Too hot, too cold."
Because it shows that it's somebody on the precipice. It's somebody who's like falling down a ravine where the small talk really is the last thing tethering them to any sense of kind of this not cultural in the sense of like ethnicity, but cultural in the sense of like their ability to communicate with other people within the society itself. His ability to communicate with people is based on like, this is how you talk to people. But
he's fetishizing it though. But it's a fetishized version of normalcy.
That also connects to the sort of overarching theme that Cassavetes embodies too, is that he's to him there's no like final meaning. All his worst characters, the ones you're supposed to like root against, are all the ones that are just like, is it this or is it that? I want to know it. Just tell me what it is. Like, give me something here that and there's in Minnie and Moskowitz, she goes on a date with this guy that's like, well, we should do that one next. But
I'm down to do whatever John Cassavetes.
He's into. I mean, he only made like 7 movies, so you should see them all. But his meanings are always moving, and his characters, his best ones, are sort of improvisers in the sense of like they're just like, she meets Billy, he sings opera. Let's sing. She meets the guy at the bar, they sing their song together. She's willing to. She meets the guy, she tries all of her different techniques to kind of get through to these people. And Nick is one of the characters that is like constantly trying to just like pin things down and make them stand still. And all the best stuff that happens for Cassavetes is constantly moving.
Yeah, and I think that if I may, a couple other things I wanted to point out. One is that when Nick is defending her, she's not crazy, she's unusual,
right?
Unusual. Which leads me to wonder if that's what the Cyndi Lauper record was inspired from. She's so unusual.
Oh, no, I think she just was probably told that.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. She's smart. She's very smart though. And so then I'm just gonna crowbar this point in too, that like Cassavetes is someone that who else has like inspired both a Fugazi and a La Tigre song, right? Like that's the sign of like what an artist is. Now whether you engage with or
Mr. Music over here,
misogynist genius,
yeah, and like in Cassavetes, like Gena Rowlands is mentioned in the lyrics in the Fugazi song too, and like what a dichotomy of artists, but are artists, and like you can engage with the art or not, it doesn't make it less valid as art, and which is the best sort of Cassavetes representation. And then that's just more of an observation because I know we have plenty of things we talked about, but I wanted to kind of crowbar those in. I also think it's a bummer to me that we didn't talk about the "Dad, will you stand up for me" scene, because I think that is a lot of text is what just appeared on the screen. And I'm not going to read any of it. I'm going to continue my point. But I think that, and then he like, he's like, and he literally stands up, right? And he's like, no, I mean it. Will you please stand up for me? Right? Like that's one of the key to understanding the Mabel character, I think. It's like, she's not kidding. It's not a goof. Like it's real for her. But then like, oh yeah, haha, sure, check it out, haha.
See, that's not the reading that I got from the father. What I got from the father is that he was just so uncomfortable with engaging, because it's not like she does that and then the mother is like, going along with it. The mother is like, no, don't you fucking understand what she's saying to you? Like, stand up for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that exchange says everything to me.
Well, whether it's amusing or not, what the reaction doesn't matter. It's the action and just the like, this is like a real moment, and it's chosen to be interpreted as, oh, all right, sure, like, okay, I don't know what to do here.
I guess I would push back on that and say that I don't think that it was interpreted by the father. I just think the father is someone that like just had no connection to anything real. I think you're supposed to understand that like the character is like, Mabel is 100% real. Like, she's dealing like with these emotional issues, being tethered to this relationship, whatever it is. And you're supposed to get to the background on it, is that the father was so unable to really tap into anything like that. The father was so superficial. The father was so like, had such a lack of understanding about any of the stuff that she says, will you stand up for me? And he just takes it literally and stands up. And I don't think that he was kind of pushing it off. I think that was his reaction. And then you start to realize that like, this is someone who has been born from day one into a situation that completely she is antithetical to who she is, right? Like, she is creative. She is smart. She's whimsical in a lot of ways. Like, she has this thing that the father like is just unable to process. So and it's like
So rather than just shout balls over your point,
balls.
I'm just going to bring up the point because there's not going to be another point that I can interject into this that would make the slightest bit of sense otherwise. That's basically the relationship my mother had with her mother, almost exactly. So I'm speaking from some degree of experience here because it broke her. It broke her as an adult human being and haunted her entire life. And I think that's low key what you see. Right. Like, I think it's so telling, like seeing, in some cases it's like, oh, well, like what's that? So your parents define who you're, blah, 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 whatever. But like, think about the situation that Mabel finds herself in, that like, she's not really built for the world or the societal expectations that are put on her, the influences of society and so on and so on. But she, as you mentioned, is creative. She is like engaged and like people, like being around her. Like but she has it through her lens and her mode of creativity and interaction. And it's not correct. So a lot of times, like I always talk about how I get so upset with people having judging whether people have the correct opinion or not. Right? Because how can an opinion be correct? And there's a rush to judgment on almost everything now. But man, it's not like the 70s were much better, right? Like, in fact, if anything, there was all that like Leave It to Beaver warmed over BS that like, is not so subtly whacking everyone over the head here, but that's not all it is. And I think that it's vital to, so interpret the George reaction however you want, whether he's low-key being a dick, whether it's just his natural discomfort at a situation that he doesn't understand or want to deal with. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the reaction is just part of the, like, no, I'm serious. Stand up. Huh?
I disagree with the last part of what you said. I think it matters fucking tremendously. I think my pushback on it is that I think that see, I was profound. Like, I cried last night when I watched this Woman Under the Influence. Like, the first time I watched it, I had like whatever thoughts, and then I watched it last night and I sobbed, and there were parts of it that like I felt sincerely connected to. Like I felt tapped into in like really weird ways, and I think that it's a transcendent moment where she finally kind of does put her words into a language where I think society at large could probably understand, or in her mind society at large can understand, which is stand up for me. I think that line for her is finally putting like decades of misunderstanding, decades of turmoil into words that I think that in general society could like understand. You know what I mean? Like, her father didn't stand up for her. Whatever the fuck happened in her childhood, like, we don't know. but we are suddenly transported into understanding that throughout her childhood, her father kind of just railroaded over her, and I probably did treat her as whimsical, but I don't think this moment is whimsical. Like, him kind of just pushing it off. I think this moment is actually sincerely important because I think she's finally put those words into something that human beings within our society, people that have been fully brainwashed by our society, I guess, could understand. Stand up for me. It's putting it as plainly, as interconnectedly as you possibly could. And the father just goes, "Oh, all right," and just stands up, like, taking that phrase literally. I think that if that just happened and everyone kind of laughed it off, it would be that side of it. But the fact that the mother,
okay, hold on. So it sounds like you didn't get my point at all, because that wasn't what I was saying. What I was saying is that, like, his reaction to it doesn't matter in the fact that it's important for Mabel's character. That's what I was saying. I was saying it was a critical moment of her story that, again, I agree with you that she was able to engage in a way that other people understood, and to have, and this happens instead. Again, whether it's by malice, whether it's just like,
but I think it does matter why it happens, because I think the fact that the father just kind of stands up, you start to realize, like, the house that she was raised in, it's not that anybody had any kind of malice towards her. The fact that the father just kind of stands up. Yeah, just yeah.
It can be just as devastating that he's just not up to the task of appreciating her for who she is, as being deliberately neglectful or abusive or anything else.
I mean, maybe it's my own personal bias about things that I've experienced that would say that one of them is considerably more devastating than the other one. So I guess I'll take myself out of it.
I've done tons of therapy too, and for that mode, it is important to find these threads and these sort of antecedents for we to understand where we came from and why we are the way we are. I just don't always think it matches up exactly when you're doing it to a fictional character in a constructed.
I'm not. It's nothing to do with my own, my own experience with therapy. It has more to do with the fact that I think Cassavettes is giving us kind of a window for a second into the way that Mabel was raised.
And I think so. I
don't think that there's any form of malice.
But I don't even think it needs to be a window into the way she was raised. Is in this scene, at this moment, in this crux of a place where she's asking something, like you so eloquently say, like, it's so desperate for a support there, and he gives this ridiculous non-response. It's that there she is experiencing that loss right in the moment.
Okay, the thing is that, first of all, there's two other. I think the thing that changes the interpretation of this are two other interactions. The first interaction is the mother looking at him and saying, "Don't you understand what she's asking you right now?" And throughout this, we've been shown that the father is, like, kind of dopey. Like, he drops her when he's trying to lift her up. He gets upset about the spaghetti. He's unable. It's not, but, like, he's just unable to comprehend the situation at all, right? Like, his own reaction.
He's not up to the task.
It's far more insane.
Many parents are not.
Well, he's not. We're supposed to understand that he's not. He's a terrible parent, like, in the way that she is a great parent, because she kind of goes out of her way to engage with the creativity of her kid. She's a creative mother. She's a whimsical mother. She's a happy mother. Like, the father seems like, first of all, he's unable to comprehend the situation. Instead, he lashes out at Nick about the spaghetti, right? And just does the whole ridiculous, like, "I'm not a spaghetti guy," which is not a thing that any human being should say. No human.
I'm totally a spaghetti guy.
Yeah. Who isn't a spaghetti guy? I don't trust those guys.
But then you have this other interaction where she finally says, after you've kind of been given that hint that he's unable to comprehend the situation, she just stand up for me. The fact that the mother says, "Don't you understand what she's telling you?" If he was being a dick, the mother would be like, "Yo, fuck you, stop being a dick and look at our daughter." That's not what she says. The mother is like, literally saying to him, like, "Don't you understand what our daughter is trying to convey to you?" And then the third interaction, I think, is that when he runs out, when she's doing the Swan Lake thing, because he finally realizes, it clicks for him, "Oh, she wants me to stand up for her." And then he runs out. She's doing the Swan Lake dance on the table, and like, finally, he's just looking at it, like, after saying, "Hey, you stay away from my daughter," looks at her, like, with his mouth open, like, "Oh, I don't really know what's going on here." And those interactions, I think, are building a picture for you of a character that there's nothing malicious about it. And I think that if there was something malicious, change the dynamic of the story. I think the fact that the father is completely unable to deal with the situation because he is the person that's the small talk person to the T. Like he's unable to engage with other people past that.
He's all small talk.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, and maybe you guys will disagree, and like I just wanted to fully explain what I was trying to.
I buy that take.
I think you focused laser-like on the word malice, and okay,
I focused
sure.
I focused on the words like with laser focus. It doesn't matter because I think it does, but it's not, you know.
But I'm saying, like, so whether he's a bad dude or whether he's just insensitive or just doesn't understand or is just, you know, cruising through life, you know, like brr, 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 doesn't matter in regards to how his actions continue to negatively affect a person who is not understood.
And I think also that you make the mistake of thinking that his actions have a clearly understandable meaning, even in the context of the film. It's a weird reaction.
It's like he thinks he's in the Marx Brothers or something.
Yeah.
Some way, you know, like
so
what?
The movie's not even, I don't think, making it very clear. Like here, this is because he's this and doing that. It's don't clearly a miscommunication, but I don't think we can nail it down more than that.
I think it's chronologically putting these miscommunications into a timeline so that you can understand that she's been misunderstood for her entire life. That's all I really.
Yeah, it's a cross correlation of like past behavior and like something this is not like a unique incident, right? She's probably maybe that's how he. Anytime there's like real emotion like that's expressed, maybe his reaction is to like try to do something that I'll just do this, like it's like a motor thing or something.
I would agree with you on that if the mother didn't, like, you know, if it wasn't in this transcendent moment, the mother kind of grabbed him and said, like, don't you understand for once? And the mother's, I think different characters in their relationship to Mabel throughout this movie kind of speak to different aspects of her personality, right? Like the fact that her mother is kind of seems like a flaky alcoholic makes it possible for Nick's mother to point out, like to paint her as a flaky alcoholic, because it's almost like a genetic thing. I don't think that you ever see any evidence that she is, but like the fact that, like, you know, oh, like, look, her mother is like this, then it's easy to paint her like this. I think the fact that her father doesn't understand her, and I don't think I wouldn't believe that her father was being malicious. I just think her father, they're painting the picture that the father is kind of just dopey and out of it and is like the most superficial variety of like the small talk person that I think throughout the movie when Nick misunderstands her. And I think Nick has a lot of his own issues and is a complicated, layered character that has all of these different like insecurities and anxieties. And I think there's no way to pigeonhole Nick into any specific thing, because by the end of the movie, he does understand her or at least accept her. By the end of the movie, he's like, you know what, this is, like, not, I mislabeled this. I think that our view of Nick is as a complicated, layered person, but I think there also has to be somebody within that picture to make the point clear that is so dopey, that is so disconnected from the actual realness of any kind of society, that he's just literally is the person that will stand up and just go, will you stand up for me? Yeah, sure. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's a bit. I think, or I do think it matters that it's not malicious. I do think that it matters that throughout her whole life, they're just her first experience with adults that should have provided her with some kind of understanding and said, listen, society, maybe you're not someone who's cut out for society in the way that we look at it. But like the fact that, you know, your differences are multi-layered, like the world around you is multi-layered. You know, you have these aspects, you have creativity, you have intelligence, you have, you know what I mean? Like, instead of getting some kind of understanding, some kind of, or at least engagement with at least some aspects of her personality, it seems like her first experience with adults, you know, are your parents. The one parent is kind of a flaky alcoholic, it seems like, from the first scene, because she kind of says that to her mother. She's like, hey, don't just think I'm doing whatever I'm having a nice night or something. If some emergency happens, like you have to call me and say some emergency happened. Like, so she's kind of putting herself on a plane where she's at least more responsible than her mother is in her eyes. And then the father is kind of literal to the point where it's like he's unable to engage with anything going on in her life and is just kind of standing up when she says, stand up for me. So I think that chronologically painting a picture of this is someone who's been misunderstood for their entire life. Society's misunderstood them. You watch that. You watch the neighbor misunderstand her. In the words of Cassavettes, like, all that really happens in this movie to get her committed is that the neighbor is uncomfortable. Like, that's all that really happens. And he's a boring guy that's uncomfortable.
Well, and to speak to that point, if I may, it's not even a point. It's just one of my favorite lines is "I love you, but I don't understand you."
Yeah,
I think that's one of the keys to understanding.
That is the key. I think. Yeah, I think that's the key.
Yes, that's what the Cassavettes is asking us to adopt. You don't have to understand. The desire and the need to understand creates a lot of destruction.
And it's you know, it's poignant. I think after Thanksgiving, where people engage with their families. No, but like people engage with their families, they go home, and I love you, but I don't understand you is kind of the key to being part of a family, right? Like, I don't think that most of us are ever going to understand a lot of the people in our family. We love them because, you know, that's the person that, or those are the people that raised us. We love them because those are the people that we've brought into our circle. We love them because we have relationships with them. But you're not going to understand most people. And I think that, you know, painting a picture of probably the most misunderstood person imaginable in a woman under the influence is kind of the centerpiece of it. She's been misunderstood forever.
And understanding also is not acceptance, too.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. You can hate what you understand. I'll just say, this person...
And I do.
This person said, I'm not a fan of early Cassavetes, Shadows, Faces, Too Late Blues, and found the emotional chords of said movies to be an off-putting nexus of theatrical and inauthentic. What would you folks say to sway me into giving his later films a chance? Just for reference, my go-to for what I consider authentic human stuff is the films of the 60s, 70s in memora. I would say just give it up, dude. I would say that's not going to happen.
Pack it in.
Thing. Oh,
sorry.
Go get your shine box.
All right,
just in memora.
I think that we should probably cut it here because we've gone over an hour. But I do want to say, true, I've gone over an hour.
All right.
If either of you guys want to join, I am willing to do a jump on Twitch and do kind of a furthering of this conversation if you want. I do want to say that starting Friday, if everybody kind of bails out now, starting Friday, Movie Night Extravaganza is back for season 2. We're going to be on twitch.tv/Movie Night Extravaganza. We have Bonnie Burton, we have Renee Roon, we have Christina, we have Conan, we have Andy, everybody talking about Alien, the 1979 Ridley Scott, who, guess what, suck my dick. I watched it on an iPhone, so fuck you, Ridley Scott. I didn't really. I watched it on my normal screen, so don't worry about that. But
only slightly bigger.
Yeah, slightly. You know. Anyway, we're gonna jump onto the Movie Night Extravaganza Twitch. Subscribe to This Revolution. Subscribe to Movie Night Extravaganza on Twitch, on YouTube. You know, we have a Patreon. So does This Is Revolution. Everybody, thank you so much for being a part of this.
From outside of town, I got a spaceship in my head.